Today is Tuesday, September 3rd, and we covered 3 different parts of speech today, so I'm going to record them separately. And the first one is a verb. As we started talking about reviewing verbs, students were very easily able to come up with a definition that it's an action, a word that expresses an action. But I added to that definition because there's a little bit more to it, and we had to talk about this a little bit, but it was an action or a state of being. When we said a state of being, that really just means that something exists. There's no action for it, it just is. And so that was our state of being verb. Is, I am, are, was, were. And thinking back to our studies of grammar in the past, we had a special word for those kinds of verbs, and those were linking verbs. And we'll talk more about how they're used in sentences, but for right now I just want students to remember that there are linking verbs. Linking verbs, action verbs, and helping verbs. So then we went through and gave examples of each of those. If am, is, are, was, were are linking verbs, we came up with an example of an action verb. So, play. And we said we could say that in different forms with different suffixes. Plays, playing, played. They all mean the same thing, but they're all written in different forms. And so that brought us to another term that we use, which is tense. When we talk about verbs, we talk about verb tense. And so there are 3 different tenses: present, past, and future. Oops. And these are all terms that students have learned throughout their years of education up to 7th grade. Nothing is review here. What we'll talk about more in 7th grade are some more complex tenses, but for right now, all I want students to be able to recognize in a sentence is a verb. And so we talked about action verbs, linking verbs, and then we had this third kind called helping verbs. And just like their name, they help other verbs that don't make sense by themselves. So for example, play, if I was talking about it happening before in the past, I could say had played, I have played, I will have played. The helping verb here is had, have, had. And it doesn't make sense in the form of the sentence to use it by itself without the helping verb. Then we have to use these. And again, we'll spend a little bit more time talking about these more in context so that it makes a little bit more sense. For right now, what I'll be mostly concerned with students identifying is just an action verb. And so we came up with a hint. What's a way that we can remember or recognize a verb in a sentence? And so we looked at a couple sentences and we came up with the idea that action verbs are words that if you ask yourself a question, ask yourself, can it be done? Is it something I can do? Another thing, and we didn't really talk about this much in class, but in thinking about how we formed these verbs up here, we can also add ing to the end of a lot of verbs, just to see if they're verbs. So if I looked in this sentence and it had the word hit, and I wasn't sure if it was a verb, I could add the suffix ing to it, hitting, and that makes sense. Whereas I wouldn't be able to do that with a word like cat, which is a noun. I couldn't say catting. So another little hint is that you can add ing to the end of action verbs to check them out. And so we actually had a sentence that we went through and practiced all of this. Here it is. We remembered from the last time that we did this our nouns, which were cat, eyes, and our check was that we could put the in front of it. The cat, the eyes, the path, the luck. And so in looking at our verbs, we said, well, what's an action? What's something that I could do or that I could see someone doing? And I'm thinking of my noun, the cat. What did the cat do? It crossed. And is there anything else the cat did? Is there something else I can do? Brought. I brought something. Our other check was to see, can you put ing at the end of the main verb? Crossing. brought, we wouldn't say broughting, but we know that the present tense form of that is bring, and I could say bringing. And so those are our action verbs.